As an educated generation who is consuming and will continue consuming news for many years to come, we should have an impact on the shift in journalistic outlets. For our Principles of Journalism final project, we created a survey and asked 100 college students a few questions regarding the news outlets they use, how often they use them, and how they think news should be looking into the future. First of all, we asked students how often they are getting their news and where from. From our research, we found that 91% of 100 students access news from specific sources once or more a day, which shows that our generation is interested and wants to stay constantly updated on what is going on. Of those 100 students, 64% of them are getting their news from social media. A journalistic expert said that social media users discover a lot of their news from social media outlets because it would take a user of social media just a few minutes to find out about a news story, but it would take a non-social media user 3 times as long to read the same story.
Yeah, I use social media for news.
Yes, I do use social media for news.
If I see something on Twitter or Facebook, I'll click a link if I find it interesting.
Every once in a while I'll click on, those links on Facebook. I don't really necessarily believe anything I read, but it also does lead to explanations further, and that I can further look up for my own benefit.
Non-social media users would have to read more pages and visit a news website 10.9 times compared to 2.9 times for a Facebook user to read the same exact story. Next, we decided to ask students if they use social media for news, what type. The results revealed that 56% use Facebook, with Twitter in second at 36%.
I usually use like Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, any kind of social media app I have on my phone or on my laptop.
I use Facebook and Twitter for social media.
An expert said that Facebook is meant to see all kinds of news, like entertainment or political, but Twitter, on the other hand, is more of a breaking news website where users can instantly see worldwide to local breaking news. A similar study focused on the American population as a whole, and it showed that 64% of Americans use Facebook on a daily basis, and half get their news from Facebook. This is about 30% of the American population. Also, about 16% of Americans use Twitter, and half use it for news, so about 8% of the American population gets their news from Twitter.
What device do you access your digital news on most often?
My cell phone.
Usually my iPhone or my Mac.
My phone or my laptop.
I usually use my phone to access digital news.
In our study, we also found that 69% of people use smartphones and 29% of people use their laptops or computers to access their digital news sources.
Do you ever read the newspaper to get your news?
If it's around, but mostly I'd rather just use the internet.
Not usually, no.
I used to every once in a while, but now that I have the course load that I have, I haven't really had time to read as much as I want to.
No, I don't. I usually don't have time.
The next question we asked students was how often they read the newspaper. We found that 67% of students rated between rarely ever and never. While this is over majority, there are still some students who read the newspaper once a week to once a month. Because of the declining audience, newspapers have lost 31.5% of their share of the advertising market to online and mobile media for the period of 2009 to 2012. This was shown by a recent study from eMarketer. But it's important to remember that social media is just another innovation that is changing and adapting journalism. Before social media, there was the television, and even before that, the radio, but journalists found a way to adapt as they will for social media. Matthew Hall, a director at UT San Diego, is in charge of moving forward with digital and social media strategies for a daily newspaper. He says, since people like the news and like conversation, there should be a place that the two mesh, in other words, social media. He states, the best thing you can realize is the only constant in journalism is change. So if you are open to that, and kind of a quick learner on both the tech end and from the mechanics on how to share stories with readers, you are going to be okay. But it's important with the changes in media to still keep journalistic integrity intact. An expert said that the boundary between professional and personal has become vague amid a compelling tide of interconnected news sources and outputs. When a breaking news story is coming up all over social media sites, a journalist has to work under the pressure of filtering information and checking credibility within a matter of minutes. Something that makes this process difficult is that sources are not necessarily fully known when coming from social media. Although sites like Facebook and Twitter make it easy for journalists to contact sources, there is a credibility gap in actually knowing who your sources are. Beyond social media, there are also other creative ways to keep the population informed on news, like The Daily Show. We asked students in our study how effective are satirical shows like The Daily Show as a way to inform you on news, and 75% of them rated between somewhat effective and extremely effective. Hub Brown, former anchor, reporter, and producer in local and commercial television, said that the stock and trade of The Daily Show is hypocrisy, exposing hypocrisy, and nobody else has the guts to do it. They really know how to crystallize an issue on all sides and see the silliness everywhere. An expert said that The Daily Show may contain some lessons for newspapers and networks struggling to hold on to fleeing readers. All in all, while most of our generation may not take advantage of print news as much anymore, 77% of students agreed that journalistic outlets should stay a mix of digital, television, and print. From our studies, we conclude that traditional outlets should continue to grow their digital media aspects to keep the people now and of future generations updated on important news. We also believe that traditional news sources should experiment with satire, like The Daily Show, because it may open up their reader base to a wider audience. No matter what new technology arises, it is the duty of journalists to continue to adapt and evolve to keep the worldwide population informed.